Hello and welcome back. I've been giving it some thought recently of the two characters behind me, one being Charles Darwin and the other God. Now, the big question is, can they both coexist? That is a big question. Yes, they can if you do not take a literal sense of the Bible. In other words, taking the book of Genesis, the creation, the order of creation, if you take that as a physical absolute, then you're in trouble. Like the young earth creationists have taken a lot of context, and I believe out of context, to manipulate. I mean, they've made words up on Hebrew, they haven't got a proper English term anyway, and adapt it for their own means. And the reason for them adapting it to their own means is because they need to destroy, or try in their own minds to destroy, the theory of evolution, because the evidence is so surmountable now for evolution. It's beyond ridiculous. Not to deny it, you're just lying to yourself. But if you're a genuine Christian and a Muslim, etc., then you're happy. I'm sure most people will be happy that through non-random selection that these natural processes work. And obviously, looking at the dates of geologists who put out there, the Earth's about sort of 4.5 billion years old, and I don't think there's many people that will disagree with that. So, young Earth creationists are definitely in a minority when it comes to that data. Now, if you look at the Vatican recently, I mean, it's astonishing. The Vatican, they've evolved. Let's face it, the Vatican have evolved from very primitive beings a few hundred years ago, putting scientists to death for disagreeing with a literal sense of the Bible. They've now accepted, they've apologised to Galileo Galilei for his observing of the stars and planets, and knowing that the sun was the centre of our solar system and not the Earth, which is the old sort of medieval type of mentality of their kind of beliefs. And they were kind of taught down, sort of, not biblically, but that kind of, energy behind those sort of stories that sort of driven those sort of mindsets into place. So you can kind of understand where they were coming from. But we didn't know what we know now, obviously, or in fact a few years ago when we started observing the stars and the galaxies, etc. So with that apology to Galileo Galilei, which is a long time in coming, but to obviously late 98, I think it was, the Vatican have also embraced Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution. And why is that? Well, basically they sent their own sort of scientists to go and test this data, to prove it right or to prove it wrong. They were happy to sit on the fence and look at the data. But when the scientists turned around to the Pope and said, "Hey, this is true. There is our ape chromosome, human chromosome number 2 is a fused chromosome, and you find that that chromosome, that centromere, is that as you would do in one of the great apes, like our cousin, the chimpanzees and bonobos. You will find they have 24 chromosomes, we have 23, and we do have our human chromosome, which is a fused chromosome. So there's our ape chromosome, there's our genetic. If there wasn't there, it would be a complete lie, and evolution would be wrong, dead in the ground. That is how evolution is on a nice edge. Any fossil out of place, any bit of genetics, DNA, etc., molecular biology, anything out of place, evolution is wrong, and scientists would prove it wrong quite easily. Now, some of you are Christians and believers that don't want to just hear evolutionists and their support for their bent on evolution, and perhaps they've got another agenda and trying to prove the Bible wrong, and I expect some aspect of that does happen, and I'm just as guilty as anybody else on that matter. But I think we have to really consider the data itself, and I know in medical trials that you can tweak to adjust to your own benefit, so you can get more funding and stuff like that. That does happen. But when you're trying to do peer-to-peer reviews and other scientists are running through your data and they're using their own laboratories to test it, and if they get different results, and you're fraudulent, you're soon found out. And then your credibility is zero. So you have to be very careful in that kind of field when you're testing evolution. Well, this is what the scientists did that worked for the Vatican. They're priest scientists. They looked at the data. They know it's real. This is not a case of, well, we give them this little bit. If we give them an inch, but take a mile, sort of thing. It is fully accepted, and also, so the Vatican have acknowledged the theory of evolution and accepted it as factual. So there we have it. I know a lot of you say we don't give a monkeys what the Vatican say. We're not Catholic, but you're still under the same umbrella. You're still under the same umbrella. You still follow the same God. Only difference will come to if you want to challenge Allah. Allah's supposed to be the same God as well, but it's completely different. Perhaps the Bible did evolve into the Quran. Who knows? But religion has definitely gone through an evolution process on itself, from what I've just said a few minutes ago. But even the likes of NASA have recently come out and said, hey, we're now looking seriously on different planets now. We know what kind of atmosphere to look for, and what sort of biochemistry or organic chemistry and the compounds we're going to find. Now that's great. That's really going to lead us on to sort of see how abiogenesis can work under those conditions. So that's very interesting to find out if there's another planet out there. And they are looking at, I think it's either 40 or 400 planets they're looking at. But don't quote me on that. But anyway, they're taking some serious data on that to see if how close to Earth that they actually are. Now, the Vatican have also confirmed that there is more than likely alien life in space, and have also said through the process of evolution they have evolved. I mean, like I said, a few hundred years ago the Vatican wouldn't even toy with this notion, let alone openly stating and apologising and accepting these factual data. I mean, it's music to my ears, and it's supposedly it's music to a lot of people's ears, but when you've got, I'm going to tell you somebody now, is a Professor Kenneth Miller. Now, he is a cellular biologist, and he's a Roman Catholic. And when you've got people with that ability and qualifications and professionalism, and obviously one of the best in his field, and he's looking at this data, analysing it, testing it, trying to prove it wrong, and it's coming out exactly right. And we make a forecast on prediction for evolution. If this data shows this, then we've evolved. If it shows something different, there's obviously a query around that, and we have to reassess what we're thinking. And they're coming out and they're going, bang, it's on the money. Evolution's proven. This is proven. Chromosome 2, retroviruses, DNA, etc., etc., etc. All the way through our whole genetics and our cousins' genetics fully mapped out. Now you've got the Human Genome Project has been going on for goodness sake how long now, 20 odd years, fully mapped out now, and the way the master recently said, 96% now is human and chimpanzees, there's a drop now, it's not quite as close is it as you thought. But then they realised that not only is that goalpost slightly moved, but the human variation between myself, maybe someone living in Africa or South America, can be 3% or different as well. So it's still the same percentage rate between us and chimpanzees, just that it can be 3 or 4 from one adult, from one human being, or 1% or slightly less from another. That's how genetics works. But anyway, so chaps behind me, can they both exist? Do they both exist? Is one telling a lie? Are both telling lies? Or has humans just made up everything just to make up excuses for how life got here in the first place and how we are all today? But from my own personal perspective, I think if you take obviously Charles Darwin's theory of evolution is bang on the money. There's no question about that. From a literal sense of the Bible, is a problem. Science does contradict, and I will go with science all the way. That this is an old Earth, not a young Earth, and evidence is surmountable to support that theory. Now, if you don't take a literal sense of the Bible, and you're happy to accept that a God or creator, or whatever you like to call this person or persons, have put everything down here, and everything has just evolved over time, with hardly any of any intervention or anything like that, intelligent design, that kind of malarkey, then I don't really have an issue with that, and I think you'll find a lot of sort of evolutionary biologists don't either. Anyway, but as always, feel free to comment, etc. And thanks for watching. Cheers, loz.